One of the interesting things about being one of the older guys in YouTube is I've seen a whole lot of things come and I've seen a whole lot of things go, okay, in terms of fitness trends. And one of the most ridiculous fitness trends these days is bro science. Bro science basically means if you don't agree with what all the cool kids are saying in YouTube these days, if you don't subscribe to the latest trendy scientific study, you're labeled a bro scientist and people say you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Well, that's cute. Listen to this. I was born in 1974, okay? I grew up in the 80s, became a young man in the 90s, and now it's 2016. When I was growing up in the 80s, people were saying the same thing they said since the 50s. You know, 3 square meals a day, eat your steak, your bacon and eggs for breakfast, you know, protein, fat, sticks to the ribs, makes you strong, okay? All of a sudden, in the late 80s, early 90s is when, you know, bodybuilding became a little bit more mainstream. The 90s, like, bodybuilding magazines were everywhere, supplements were everywhere, people were doing scientific studies on bodybuilding nutrition, and all of a sudden 3 square meals a day weren't good enough. You had to eat 6 times a day, okay? You couldn't eat more than 30 grams of protein in a sitting, okay? Everything else was, they didn't have bro science back then. Everything else was called old-fashioned thinking. Okay? Cholesterol will kill you and fat will make you fat. All right? That was like the 90s. Now all of a sudden, you know, 2010s, people realize that fat doesn't make you fat. People realize that dietary cholesterol, the cholesterol you eat, doesn't increase the cholesterol in your blood. Okay? People are saying, oh, you could eat all your protein in one sitting. You don't have to divide it throughout the day. And anything else is bro science. Well, listen to this. Everything you're saying now is bro science. Eating 6 meals a day, only eating 30 grams of protein at a sitting, was academic science 20 years ago. It's like, you know, you're only cool if you eat 6 times a day because that's academic science. 10 years later, 20 years later, you're only cool if you do intermittent fasting because eating 6 times a day is bro science, okay? So what happens if a new scientific study comes out saying something completely different? Is all of a sudden intermittent fasting going to be bro science? If somebody says tomorrow you could only have 10 grams of protein in a sitting? So what I'm basically trying to say is academic science is the most ridiculous thing in the world because it's based upon a study, and the study is not necessarily 100%. I mean, I remember people were talking about academic science, about how you had to take a supplement. I think it was called boron or something like that. It was some mineral which would help you build muscle. What they did is they got pregnant women, not men, not bodybuilders, not athletes, not normal women, but pregnant women, and they gave them some boron or whatever, you know, this mineral was, and it increased, like, you know, their muscle tone or something like that. Well, maybe they had a deficiency. So you got a bunch of bodybuilders saying, hey, boron increases your muscle tone. So they started, you know, taking tablets, whatever mineral this was. And, you know, they weren't really getting results. Of course not. I mean, if you're, you know, if you have deficiency in whatever, increasing it might give you more muscle mass. But the fact of the matter is this scientific study was skewed. It had nothing to do, it was not something that had to do with the truth. Okay. Now let's talk about bro science. Okay. I say bro science is better than academic science because bro science is based upon results. If you get results, that's good bro science. Okay? It has nothing to do with your penmanship. It has nothing to do with the PowerPoint presentation. It has nothing to do with you know, how many years you went to school and didn't lift weights and are fat or skinny or whatever. It has to do with whether you produce results or not. Back in the 50s, there was a guy called Larry Scott. Okay? Larry Scott had 20-inch arms. Larry Scott trained with a guy called Vince Gironda in his gym. Vince Gironda and a guy called Rio Blair were really into nutrition back then. They both said that that nutrition is 85% of bodybuilding. Okay? They both said that you should eat low carb, high fat, high protein. Okay? Rio Blair came up with the first decent protein supplement. Okay? His was a milk and egg supplement, whereas the only other supplements were like Joe Weider was selling like soy protein. He sold a lot of it because he was a great marketer. I mean, he had, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger and all the other guys doing advertisement for him, but his stuff still sucked. Okay, everybody, you know, talked great about Rio Blair's supplement. And back in the 50s, okay, a lot of times they were talking about eating several times a day. Okay, keeping a positive nitrogen balance, separating up your protein over several meals. Now, academic science at the time in the 50s, 60s, 70s said 3 squares a day. Okay, but they were there saying eat several times a day. Okay, now all of a sudden, the 80s, the 90s, people are saying, hey, cholesterol will kill you, fat will make you fat. They still said eat high fat, low carb. Okay? Regardless of what academic science was saying now. Now, all of a sudden, it's, you know, the 2010s. People are saying, oh, cholesterol that you eat won't raise the cholesterol in your blood. Fat won't make you fat. You know, you don't have to eat several times a day. And you know what? It still works to eat high fat, low carb, high protein. It still works to eat several times a day. Okay? So what I'm basically saying is bro science, like Vince Gironda and Rio Blair had, it works back then, it worked in the 80s, 90s, and it works in 2010 and 2016. Whereas academic science went back and forth. So you tell me what makes more sense, okay? Bro science isn't stuff you make up. Bro science is stuff that you try and it works, and if you get results, you say, hey, this works. So what I'm basically saying is, don't necessarily listen to academic science, and don't necessarily listen to bro science. Just consider the source. If somebody says something and they're talking about a new experiment or a new study that's been done, read the study. Find out the conditions. Find out who it was tested on. Find out what the results were. Okay? And decide for yourself. If somebody says, hey, I've got a bro science-y kind of idea, did this guy train anybody? How did it work? Did they get results? Did they not get results? And at the end of the day, make the decision for yourself. Not based upon what's cool, what the cool kids are saying. Not based upon, you know, what the latest study is. But based upon what gets results in real life. What has been proven to get results time and time again.